Hey y'all, my name is DJ. Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk books. So we have come to the very end of 2023 and my gosh, wasn't this just like a year? This year has been absolutely too much. A lot of things have happened in this year. Personally for me, and I'm sure personally for all of you, and just globally, just being a living organism in this universe, and by happenstance being on the planet Earth, we are dealing with a multitude of foolery. And I believe that I speak for myself and multiple people when I say that this year has put us in a complete tizzy. Anybody who made it out of this year and, you are spiritually whole, you are mentally whole, emotionally whole, like everything is just going well for you, you're stable and comfortable with who you are and how your life is going, good for you, because most of us, we're just struggling to figure out what even is this? But that being said, there are a lot of things for us to be happy about, proud of, that we've even made it through this year with the clarity of saneness. But speaking for myself, there are a lot of achievements that I've made this year that I do want to pat myself on the back for. And I just want to congratulate everyone else out there on just making it this far in life. And a really good thing about this year is that I got to restart my reading journey, as in 2022 I read like one book, two books. I was struggling through that year and most of the beginning of this year. I didn't read as much as I wanted to, but I got the locomotive running again, and here we are. And also the achievement of me being back on YouTube and being able to engage and connect with all of you beautiful people out there. And we get to connect and talk about these books. That all being said, let's start talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2023, because there were some bangers. So let's get the party started. So the first book on my top 10 2023 book list is Moon Witch Spider King by Marlon James. Woo! All right, you know how we do. Let's talk about this cover. The cover is fire. If you guys have read or heard of the first book, that was Black Leopard, Red Wolf, I believe it's the same artist that did this cover, did that cover. But woo, very interesting. We all love this, don't we? So this is the second book in a trilogy. We're just waiting for that third book to come out. Marlon James, we are waiting. We are waiting. Can't wait any longer. But yeah, so this is the second book. The first book, Black Leopard, Red Wolf, was following a character by the name of Tracker. And he joined up with a bunch of other people and things, creatures and things, and they go on this journey to find a child. So this second book is following Sogolan, who is the Moon Witch. She was a part of that first group, but this book is actually showing her perspective of that entire journey. And not only that, but like her childhood and how she became the Moon Witch and all of the adversity and issues that she had to face and struggle with growing up and becoming the infamous Sogolan. This book is absolutely amazing. It definitely has a place in my heart because this entire world is just something that is different from anything I've ever experienced reading, watching television, movies, fantasy world, any of that stuff. This is crazy. And the crazy thing is with the first book, when Marlon James was doing his tour and he was talking about like the comparison of what this book may be and what we think of when it comes to other like fantasy stories and fantasy worlds, some way, somehow it came out to be that this was like the African version of Game of Thrones. Absolutely not. Even he himself said that that was a joke. As a person who's read both of the books in this trilogy and waiting for the third one, I would say that this is more so along the lines of like a Lord of the Rings vibe, or even like maybe a Harry Potter world, but a little bit better magic. And it's not necessarily a journey of triumph. These are all people who we can't really say they're good characters, bad characters, or anything like that. They've been tasked with a job of finding a child, and they all feel different ways about the situation. They don't all like each other. Sometimes they're fighting in between each other in these groups. It's a lot going on, and it's not like your average fantasy, but it's amazing, and it is very, very black. It's African. So Love that. Because when you think fantasy and you think like magic, witches, warlocks, wizards, and all these different creatures and things like that, we immediately go to like the European ideal of it all. And that's not what's happening here. This is something else. Anybody who is planning on reading this book or the first book, I just want to say that there is a lot of adult shit going on in here. There's a lot of cursing, there's a lot of sex, there's like sexual abuse, there's violence, there's a whole range of sexualities, there are shapeshifters, bestiality, tons of things are happening in here that are just ridiculously crazy. But it's worth it. If you like a crazy story, this book is for you. This is definitely on my top 10 for 2023. Moon Witch Spider King. Marlon James, love you. You're amazing. Okay, so the next book on my top 10 2023 book list is Love in Color, and this is by Bolu Babalola. So it's funny that this would even become one of my favorite books. Get a look at the cover because it's absolutely beautiful. We love that. Love that cover. But the funny thing about this being on that list is that I just don't read like love stories. I don't read romance. I'm not really into like the cliche schmooziness of it all. I'm not really into all of that. Unless it's just really good and you just can't get away from it. But this book kind of changed the way that I view romance and love stories and things like that. If you go back into my old videos, I did a video that was like kind of dedicated to love and love stories, and I randomly grabbed this book one day, like, hey, I might as well just read this. I'm on my way to work, running late, just grabbed a book, and I grabbed this, and thank goodness that I did, because it opened my eyes to beautiful love stories. This book is a bunch of anthologies, so it's a lot going on with different stories, different characters, and different point of views, but it's all written by one author. Never read a book like that before where there are multiple stories and all of them are by one author. And the crazy thing about it is that this author writes different in every story, like where it makes you feel like there are different authors. Absolutely amazing. Beautiful writing, fast-paced, beautiful love stories that involve like gods and goddesses, different like mythological people from history, and all sorts of people that are very familiar, or characters that are familiar to our like reading past. But yes, this book was absolutely amazing. It's on my top 10. If anyone is interested in reading it, now you know. Love in Color. Okay, so the next book on my top 10 2023 list is Babble. Babble by R.F. Kuang. All right, y'all know about this book. Anybody that doesn't know about this book, I mean, why are we struggling with the focus? I don't want to focus on not having focus. The fuck? I'm just realizing that every once in a while, I need to clean off my lens. All of this wasn't correct until now. Hopefully it's better now. But anyway, Babble. Come on, Babble. Babble by R.F. Kuang. So if you guys don't know about this book, now you know. This book has been pretty much everywhere, all over the internet. Anybody who doesn't know about this book, I'm very sorry that you have spent so much time underneath that rock. But come on out. The sun is shining. Things are happening. I think I gave this book a 4.5 or a 5 star. There were like some things about it that really I didn't really like, but I will say that it was an amazing, amazing, amazing book. It shined a light on so many things while being specific to some certain things. I just feel like the message in this book went beyond. The beautiful writing, the information that we got about Oxford and the characters, just amazing. So this book is following a character by the name of Robin Swift. He has gone through a lot. He's born in Asia, and a white professor from Oxford comes there and he uses silver as a conduit of magic to heal Robin. Robin is like on his deathbed laying next to his family. His family is dead. They've all died from a plague. So this professor comes, heals him with the silver bar, and takes him back to Oxford, takes him back to England, and pretty much raises this boy as his son, which later on in the book we actually do find out that this professor is his father. They get these kids and these young adults from all over the world and they bring them to Oxford under the guise that they're actually coming here to learn and just be a part of this prestigious community, which in all actuality, they're just bringing them there so that they can translate different languages into English and also use those translations to create these spells that they write on silver and they use for everyday use and even some secret like society craziness. There's a lot going on. I have a whole video where I really talk about this book in detail, but also if you'd like to know more about the book, read it. No, but this was a really, really good book. I've heard a lot about R.F. Kuang, good and bad, but from what I've read, I think she did an amazing job on this book, and it was an amazing experience to read, and it is definitely a part of my top 10 for 2023. Babble. Next book on my top 10 2023 book list is The Addict Child, and this book is by Lola J. The Addict Child, it follows two dual stories about two children who spend time in the attic of this house in separate eras. The first child, Celestine, he's actually, just like in Babble, taken from his hometown by a white man. And in this story, bringing Celestine from his country to Europe for this guy is more so like just an interest. He needed an assistant, a confidant, someone to travel with him, and he figured that this would be the best way to get someone to take them from Africa. How about that? And meanwhile, in the future, because when he's in the attic, that's around like the early 1900s. I think it's like 1909 or something like that. But then later on, I want to say like in the 90s, we're following Laura, where her family, a white family, lived in that house. And her father passed, so she ended up being there with her stepmother, and her stepmother was just extremely abusive. So she kept Laura in the attic. And when the professor died, they kept Celestine in the attic. And some way, somehow, their families are deeply rooted and connected. And it's just an amazing book showing the timeline between two people that suffer in totally different ways, but in the same place, and how those similarities of suffrage and neglect and all of that can bring people together. And even though this is a heavy book, a lot of terrible things happen in this book, and just the idea of someone being trapped in an attic or people being trapped in an attic for years, it's heartbreaking, but the ending is really, really beautiful. And I think that most people would really enjoy this book. It gives you history, it gives you ideals, it gives you an insight on the different things that have happened in the past with Black people, white people, our connection and how we intersect. And it's crazy. But yeah, The Addict Child. Absolutely suggest this book for most people, depending on if you like historical fiction, fantasy, or any of those things. This book kind of like captures all of that, and it was really beautiful. So, The Addict Child. Yes, we must highlight the cover. The cover is very, very nice. Love that. Okay, so the next book on my top 10 2023 book list is Blacktop Wasteland. Blacktop Wasteland. This book is by S.A. Cosby. Woo! When I say this was a really good book, and a lot of people kind of like put me on before I even got into reading it. I was just like, hey, I'm going to read this book. This is next. And so many people were just like, 5 stars. Like, you're 5 stars. Just go ahead and read it. Get into it. It doesn't matter what you think before, after, during. This is a 5-star book. And they didn't lie. Like, I have to say that this was a 5-star book. It's one of those books that kind of make you feel like they gotta make a movie out of this. If not a movie, they gotta make like a show or like a short series, limited series vibe, because it's definitely worth it. And S.A. Cosby has a new book out, and I keep hearing that that's a 5-star as well, so I gotta get on it. But this book is following a character by the name of Bo, and Bo is like a street rider, a street racer, one of those people who like races for money. You know, some people end up having a hard time, down on their luck, and you got to do what you got to do sometimes to make your money. So Bo races cars. And apparently before the racing, the car racing and everything, Bo was like doing these like shady deliveries, or even becoming like a getaway guy for like robberies and different things like that. So Wasn't going down that road for a while, but then things got tight, and all of a sudden someone comes up to Bo like, hey, we got a gig for you. Unfortunately, like most gigs and books like these, nothing goes correctly, right? So Bo ends up being the getaway guy, but things go wrong. People die, people get hurt. Lots of crazy shit happens in this like Virginia town. Wild. I don't want to give it away because it is a short book, but you all should definitely read this because if you like things that are like The Wire or like Power or anything like that where it has a lot to do with like street craziness but like action at the same time and not so much drama, this is definitely the book for you. I deeply enjoyed this book, Blacktop Wasteland. So the next book on my top 10 2023 book list is The Changeling. This book is by Victor Laval. I recently read this book. I think I finished it like last month. And I do also talk in detail about this book in another video. But this is one of the best books that I've read this year because I think it's like the only horror book that I read. And I love horror. I don't know, like I watch a lot of horror movies, horror shows, short films. Love horror. But the funny thing is, like, since I've started reading, I don't read horror, which is bad, which is strange. I need to get more into that. I'm in all these other genres not loving what I love. So we're going to change that in 2024. But this book was amazing. Victor's writing is absolutely amazing. It's like very capturing. It's fast-paced, very descriptive. He leaves nothing out. He gives it all to us. But this book is following Apollo and Emma, and they get married in New York. They're dating. They have a kid. And if you're not familiar with the Changeling story, there's this like ancient story of like ghouls and goblins and ghosts and different entities. Sometimes they steal babies and replace them with their own babies or different things. Go on back and watch the video where I'm talking about this because it's a lot. But Apollo and Emma go through this crazy experience with their child. People think Emma killed her child, but the baby is actually dealing with another situation. Emma disappears. Apollo's in jail. He gets released. He's looking for Emma. It's a lot going on, but it all happens in New York, and it's really, really fire. Love this story. I suggest this for everyone that is into like horror or like thriller, fast-paced books. This is it, The Changeling. Next book on my top 10 2023 book list is Black Cake. And this book is by Charmaine Wilkerson. Y'all already know how I feel about this book because I was just talking about this jammy. Black Cake. So Black Cake, I hope that focused because my camera is acting really funky today. And if it wants to, I will get a new camera in the new year. But anyway, so Black Cake is following Coventina Lincook, and she is from the island of Jamaica. She lives there with her black mother and her Chinese father. And she is like the fastest, bestest swimmer on the island. Her mother and the house assistant, they make these delicious black cakes. And a lot of things transpire. Her father is a gambler, and he doesn't really take care of the family the way that he should. And the mother is just like, hey, not dealing with this, so I'm just going to go. And all this is happening in the 60s, which is like a time where most men were taking off and the mothers were stuck with the kids, which is just kind of like universally the way that things are. But the mother was just like, I'm out of here. So she went to live her life, and Coventina ended up staying with her father. A lot of things transpire. Coventina is now a teenager. Of course, most of the men on the island are looking at her like, hey, gal, we like what we see. And they're all over her, they're into her. And unfortunately, like one of the big bosses on the island is just like, hey, listen, Mr. Lincook, you got a lot of debt that you owe us. Best way for you to pay those debts is to let me marry your daughter. But of course, Coventina doesn't want to marry this dude. She's already dating some other kid on the island. She's like 16. And she's like, why do I have to marry some guy that's like 3 times my age? He's much older than her. She doesn't want to do it. So by happenstance, while she's at the wedding, because she has to marry this guy, he's the biggest gangster on the island. While she's at the wedding, he drops dead at the wedding right after he has his first drink and a slice of black cake. So during the mayhem of him like passing out and falling down dead, Coventina got up out of there. She jumped in the ocean, swam away. And with the help of like her friend and the maid from the house, she ends up in Europe. She meets people there. She has to change her name. She goes through a lot. Then she ends up in America. So now fast forward to like 40, 50 years later, she has 2 kids. She has her husband with her. She's living in California and she gets ill. She passes away. This is really where the basis of the story is, because she leaves her children these tapes, these recordings about like her life, how she became Eleanor Bennett and no longer Coventina Lynn Cook, and that they actually have like extra family they don't know about. It's a really, really crazy story about like just learning things about your family, learning things about people that you thought you knew and you don't know, learning about how like men have been ruining women's lives for years, and all of the different stories and ways of how they've ruined women's lives, and women have just had to pick up the pieces on their own. But yeah, absolutely amazing. And this book has been adapted to a TV show. It's on Hulu, I believe. The show and the book are very, very similar. Of course, I like the book a little bit more, but it's also just as good as the book. So, Black Cake. So the next book on my top 10 2023 book list is You Are Your Best Thing. And this book is by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. Wow. I think this is like one of the only nonfiction books that I read this year. And honestly, it was the cover that got me. When I first saw the cover, I was just like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And I actually do love it. It's beautiful. But this book is an anthology. So it has multiple authors, multiple writers that are talking about vulnerability, shame, resilience, and the Black experience. A lot of these stories are coming from people who I've never heard of before, but then there are a lot of people in this book that I've actually heard a lot about. I actually follow them on Instagram, or I've read their books before, and it's just like a culmination of like amazing stories of vulnerability. Also talking about Black women that are dealing with like shame from their past relationships with men and women, dealing with shame of not knowing who they were, and how to deal with the shame of like being ridiculed in your communities, and dealing with people just treating you opposite of who you are and with the respect that you deserve. It's just multiple stories, even stories about people who are dealing with like otherness, like being homosexual or trans, or multiple things that just separate you from what societal norms would deem regular. But these people talk about how that pain and the resilience of getting through that painful experiences, or those painful experiences, have helped them become better people. And it shows that that resilience is something that rides in the DNA of Black people, specifically the Black people that have dealt with these issues in America. And wow, like I actually finished this book around the time of like October 7th, when the Israel and Gaza war kind of like started, the Israel and Hamas war started. And this really put into perspective a lot of the reasons why wars and different things happen. And there are underlying things that really aid to why these things are happening, but we don't see it because media and pop culture and tradition have us thinking one thing about a group of people that's really just not skimming the surface of what the problem is. And it all starts with us, just humans in general, realizing that we don't have to be shameful of who we are. We don't have to be ashamed of where we want to go and who we want to be in life. But there are constructs and systems that have been placed in society to make us stay on the path of being shameful, being resistant to change, and even being resistant to figuring out who we are, because that doesn't align with the elite. But yes, getting all of that from this very short read, and it was amazing. Kudos to all of these authors. Y'all see my tabs. But kudos to all these authors, because, woo, this was amazing. If you are feeling down, low, you don't feel like you have a lot of confidence in yourself or what you want to do with your life, this is definitely something you should read, because it's oozing inspiration. Yeah, You Are Your Best Thing. Love that. Woo! Woo! We are getting down to the last 2 books on my top 10 2023 book list. I mean, I've loved all of these books. It's been a really weird reading year, but that's okay because I read. I'm going to group these 2 books together because that's just the way it has to be. They're by the same author. And yeah. So the last 2 books on my top 10 2023 book list are Sula and A Mercy. And these books are by the mother queen Toni Morrison herself. So Sula, I just finished reading this book last week and I did a whole review on it. So there's that. And A Mercy, I read this the week before and did a whole review on that as well. A Mercy I read first, and this book is following multiple people that are on a plantation, and they are dealing with the death of the plantation owner, this crazy plague and illness that's going around, and it ends up almost killing the wife on the plantation. There's like these 3 slave girls, and they all live different lives on the same plantation, but they have different views of life. And a lot of trouble is caused on this plantation, and it just kind of shows like the connections that we have with people really matter, but one day they can all falter and become murderous, treacherous. There's like betrayal. It's so much going on in this book, but the bottom line to what makes it A Mercy, the fact that an enslaved mother would decide to give away her daughter just to save her from an enslaver who decided that he was going to be a rapist. And she knew that the only way to get her daughter out of that situation was to show a mercy by sending her off with another enslaver who just didn't have an eye for children. There's that. So, A Mercy. And Sula, also people living in a very small town. This is after or post-slavery. And it's about these people living in this town called the Bottom. But the Bottom is actually on the top of these hills. And the white people in that town convinced the black people that the hills were the bottom of heaven. So they were like, yeah, go over there and live there because, you know, who wouldn't want to live at the bottom of heaven while we live in the valley? You know, nobody wants to live in the valley, where the valley was the best place for them to farm and the top of the hill was the best place for them to die and have nothing. A lot of things happen. Sula ends up being like a psychopath. She's absolutely crazy, out of her mind. And she murders this little boy in town when she was like 13 years old. Her grandmother murdered her uncle. Her mother burned up in a field. She becomes like this really fast, like floozy-esque woman in town. A lot happens, but it's not all like Sula's a terrible person, but it's like a lot of things that just transpire that make Sula a terrible person amongst other people who are in the town who are very terrible. There's like this huge tragedy at the end of the book, but it's not so much tragic in the sense of like, damn, why'd that have to happen? It's more so like these people were just kind of like not operating in their intelligent forms and they were just doing a lot of things that were just like not the right thing at the right time. But it was a very, very big eye-opener, and it just showed the different connections of people like Sula and her being a psychopath and raised by a psychopath. And yeah, but it was a very good read, of course, because Toni Morrison knows how to write a book with one sentence. So this was very insightful, and it just blessed my soul. And I love that she writes these books that are just like really, really short. You know what I mean? Like, even though this book has like 200 pages, it took me a week to read it because she's Toni Morrison and you have to like have extra help like dictionaries and thesauruses and Google to help you be as smart as she is or close to it. But yeah, these 2 books, A Mercy and Sula, are damn near a part of my top 10 all-time favorite books because Toni, she just gets me. She knows how to write a book for me to love, and we miss her dearly because she's a goddess. So I'm hoping that I got all these books on the list. I hope that I got them all in there. I hope that I showed you everything that I loved this year, you know. And if you guys do want to go out and get these books it is totally worth it because they're just really good books. Show y'all all the other ones, just in case we missed any, right? We got the Changeling, we got Black Cake, we got Blacktop Wasteland, we got Babble in there. Oh my gosh, it's a lot of books. I have a lot of books. And really quickly, I am currently reading Dark Matter. We talked about this in the last video, and I was just like, nah, I'm not gonna keep this on my TBR. I'm gonna read it now. I'm currently 125 pages in. Whoa, this book is actually crazy. This needs to be a movie because I think we've kind of seen movies like this before, but like science professor goes out for dinner and drinks, gets kidnapped by somebody, they inject him with something, now he's in another dimension. He's there with his wife, who's not really his wife this time, and his whole life is absolutely different from what he was experiencing like the night before. And he's really going through it. People are dying. They're like this society that's after him. They really think he's this famous scientist. He is, but he's not. And yeah, so that's where I'm at. And it's crazy. But also, let's just talk about how Blake Crouch, who wrote this, is a great writer. Like, this is good writing. It's making me feel like I'm watching an action movie or like a thriller, sci-fi vibe, and it's got me. So I would love to see this on a screen. I'm not done yet, so I can't give a rating, but really quick, this is what I'm currently reading. So yeah, that was everything. I really tried to keep it short because who's out here trying to do these hour-long videos about the top 10 books of 2023? That would be me. I'm doing those videos. So, Happy New Year. Thank you all for rocking with me. Thank you to all the new subscribers. You guys have been talking to me in the comments and I absolutely love it. Yes, I may be going into the new year with these nails, and this is a lesson learned. Just, I can't be as spontaneous as I've been in the past. I have to think things through. And while she was doing it, I should have just been like, no, turquoise. No, but I didn't do that. Next year, I'll be a little bit more assertive. We're going to use the word no more in 2024, but it is what it is. So yeah, thank you all for coming through. You know what to do. Leave a comment, leave some suggestions, leave some love in the comment section. Also hit that subscribe button, subscribe button. Also hit the like button. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for stopping by. Peace.